All right, so imagine someone showing up at your house unannounced. All right, reluctantly, you let them inside. And then the first thing they do is they get mad and they start punching holes in your drywall because it's too hot in there. Then they turn your thermostat down and they lock you out of it. They password protect it. Then they eat all your food and they invite their friends over and they trash the place. And if that wasn't bad enough, then they claim squatters' rights and they refuse to leave. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a horrible person. That is not somebody I would want in my life. Well, I hate to break it to you, but I've got bad news because this is actively happening to over 50% of the people watching this, whether you know it or not, and it's happening inside you. Welcome to Apex, my name's Jacob, and this disrespectful son of a gun I'm referring to is called Helicobacter Pylori, or h-pylori for short. And in this video, I'm going to share my experience with it, how it contributed to wrecking my health, and how I eradicated it using a very simple 3-step process that leverages the carnivore diet and natural remedies. Alright, so to kick this off, what is h-pylori? It is a bacteria that is an unwanted guest in your gut. It goes in your stomach and it can infect your stomach and the first part of your small intestine. It's a pretty nasty bacteria, and this is something I dealt with when I was sick. It more or less gets in there and it doesn't like stomach acid, which is pretty ignorant considering it lives in stomach, so you would think it would be adapted to stomach acid, but for some reason it doesn't like that. So what does it do? It turns your thermostat down. It turns the stomach acid down, which basically means it makes your stomach less acidic. It raises your pH. And if your stomach acid is too acidic, it burrows into your stomach walls, which is not a good thing because that can lead to ulcers, it can lead to bacterial infections, it can lead to a whole lot of pain and suffering. That's what it can lead to. Like I said, I dealt with this. It is not a fun experience. Another bad thing about H. pylori is that because it lowers your stomach acid or raises the pH, it also leads to heartburn and acid reflux and indigestion, because contrary to popular belief, acid reflux, heartburn, all those things is not due to an acidic stomach. It is due to a stomach that is not acidic enough, because there is a sphincter, a valve at the bottom of your esophagus and at the first part of your stomach that when your stomach is acidic, it tightens up. It's a natural response. Problem, reaction, solution. The problem is that your stomach is very acidic. The reaction is that the sphincter tightens up and it blocks that stomach acid from coming up into your esophagus. And the solution is that you don't get heartburn. Well, this H. pylori, this unwanted guest, he gets in there and he just screws that whole process up. He raises your pH, he makes you more alkaline, and then you start getting heartburn, which is exactly what I experienced before starting carnivore. That's one of the things I dealt with when I was sick. So some of the symptoms that come along with this unwanted guest that you do not want in your stomach is, just like I mentioned, heartburn, acid reflux, indigestion, stomach ulcers, intestinal bleeding, infections down in your digestive area, stomach pain, bloating, brain fog, blood in the stool, food allergies, because when you get holes in your stomach, that is essentially creating leaky gut. So all the stuff that you consume then is able to get out of your stomach and go in places where it's not supposed to be, which is also another thing I dealt with when I was sick, and that is a horrible situation to have. It not only creates food allergies, but it creates allergies in general. If you could imagine things getting into your body, which are essentially going to become foreign objects that your body doesn't recognize because they're going into places they shouldn't be going. And that leads to another unwanted side effect, which is autoimmune conditions. And that is essentially what is happening. When you have leaky gut and you have gut permeability, then your body essentially goes into an autoimmune response because, again, you have all these foreign objects floating through your body that shouldn't be there, and your body starts attacking them. And that is an autoimmune response. That is a reaction to all the stuff that's going on in your body that shouldn't be going on. And this is also another thing I dealt with when I was sick. Not a fun situation. It can lead to a whole lot of unwanted side effects and a whole lot of pain and suffering. So as you can see, this one unwanted guest that comes in unannounced and starts screwing everything up can really have pretty detrimental impacts on your overall health. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, some other side effects are poor digestion of protein, because that H. pylori gets in there and it's essentially an overgrowth of bad bacteria, and it starts messing with the enzymes in your stomach. And because your stomach acid is lower, it can really affect your ability to digest protein, which if you're on a carnivore diet like me, or if you're on a meat-heavy diet, or if you're eating meat in general, that can be a very bad thing. And that can lead to another unwanted side effect, which is mineral deficiencies and nutritional deficiencies. And specifically, there are three. The three most common that are associated with H. pylori are magnesium and potassium, which are two deficiencies I had, and they were very, very severe. And another one is iron. And it's because this bad bacteria gets in there, it starts interfering with all these processes in your body, and it hinders your body's ability to break down, assimilate, and digest and absorb these very important minerals. Magnesium and potassium deficiency specifically can lead to heart arrhythmias, which is something I suffer from as well. It's another horrible thing that you do not want to experience. It can lead to muscle cramps. It can lead to a whole lot of really bad things because magnesium specifically is responsible for over 300 very important functions in the body. So when these things start getting messed up, these are electrolytes, and these can have detrimental impacts on your overall health. And as far as iron goes, that can lead to anemia. Again, H. pylori kind of sucks, and this is not something you want in your body. Let's talk about how many people are infected with this. Like I mentioned in the first part of this video, over 50% of the US population is infected with H. pylori, and most people are asymptomatic. So just because you don't have any symptoms does not mean you don't have H. pylori. Now, if you want to check to see for sure if you have H. pylori, you can go to the doctor and you can get a test. They typically do breath tests, stool tests, and blood tests. Those are three of the most common tests they do to see if you have this unwanted guest living inside your stomach. Now, if your doctor does determine that you have H. pylori living inside you, they're probably going to prescribe you antibiotics. That's one of the most common treatments for H. pylori. The bad thing about antibiotics, if you've ever dealt with antibiotics, is that antibiotics, per the name, kills everything. So when you take these drugs, they're killing off the bad bacteria and they're killing off the good bacteria, which is not a good thing when you have H. pylori. And the reason is because you already have an overgrowth of bad bacteria. So your good gut bacteria is already in a very vulnerable state. All right, so you take these antibiotics and you think you're doing good, and it wipes out all the bad bacteria. But it also wipes out all of the good bacteria that you had left. So if your gut is in disarray, that's going to open you up to being re-inhabited by a bunch of really bad bacteria as soon as those antibiotics wear off. And that is a very bad situation because that opens you up to fungal infections, yeast infections, candida overgrowth, SIBO, possibly H. pylori again. And this is especially true if you have parasitic infections or if you already had candida or something like that, or if you're eating a crap diet, because that is a perfect environment for these bad bugs to come in there, take over, and proliferate. And then once they're in there, once they've established their home inside you, it can be very, very hard to get rid of these things. Take it from a guy with experience. I've been through this. It sucks, okay? I'm just telling you that straight up front. Something else that's very common for doctors to prescribe to you is proton pump inhibitors, which is going to lower the stomach acid in your stomach. Now, as I mentioned before, H. pylori does not like high stomach acid. And when you have high stomach acid, it burrows into your gut walls to get away from it, which is absolutely insane, but that's what it does. So the doctors, for some reason, think that lowering stomach acid is going to fix this, which I don't know what their success rate is with this. Maybe they have success doing this. I don't know exactly how, but this is probably the exact opposite of what you would want to actually do, because when you lower your stomach acid, you're creating a more hospitable environment for these unwanted guests. And at that point, they're just going to kick up their feet on your couch and they're going to kick back and relax because they have nothing to worry about. The stomach acid isn't forcing them into your gut lining. They can come out and play. They can proliferate. They can breed. They can reproduce. They can replicate. They can do whatever the heck they want at that point. Now, I could see where if you were to lower the stomach acid and then hit them with some antibiotics, maybe that would kind of draw them out and it would be easier to kill them. I could see that happening. But just prescribing proton pump inhibitors or stomach acid reducing medication is not going to do the trick. And this is just based off my experience. I'm not a doctor. I'm not qualified to give medical advice, but I've been through the ringer with this stuff. And I personally avoid antibiotics at all costs unless they're necessary, because they can play a very important role, obviously, but you don't want to rely on them because you can also become resistant to them. And I completely avoid proton pump inhibitors. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one is because driving down the stomach acid is the exact opposite of what you want to do. You actually want to raise your stomach acid. And number two is because proton pump inhibitors are notorious for driving down magnesium levels. And they can actually create a very, very bad magnesium deficiency in the body. And like I mentioned before, H. pylori does this already. So by adding those drugs to the mix, then you're really setting yourself up to possibly creating a mineral deficiency. And I personally have witnessed this happen to people. All right, so with that out of the way, now that I have you convinced that you do not want this unwanted visitor living inside you, I'm going to share with you a very simple 3-step process that I used to eradicate H. pylori. And since I've done that, I have not had a problem with this unwanted guest since. All right, so step 1. The first thing and the most important thing out of all the stuff I'm getting ready to mention is diet. When it comes to healing yourself and overcoming pretty much any illness, to include bad things living inside you, it is very, very fundamentally important to eliminate processed food, refined carbohydrates, refined sugars, grains, and anything that is going to feed the bad stuff living in your gut. And the bad stuff living in your gut feeds on all those things I just mentioned. It doesn't really matter what it is. If you have any form of gut dysbiosis, if you have something bad living in your gut that you don't want there, it is consuming sugar. It is consuming carbohydrates. That is what these things live and thrive on. So the most important thing you can do for yourself is eliminate all carbohydrates for a period of time. I'm not trying to convince you to go carnivore, but if there was ever a reason to do that, this is that reason. And that's exactly what I would recommend. I would recommend going on a carnivore diet for at least 90 days for this period to kill off this H. pylori, to eradicate it from your system. Once you have that out of the way, you can go back to eating any kind of food you want. But I will caveat this, and if you stay to the end of this video, we're going to talk about this. If you go back to eating those refined grains and those sugars and all that bad stuff, there's a pretty good chance those unwanted guests are going to come right back and they're going to be knocking on your door. So that's step 1. Adopt a 0 carb, or at the very, very least, a low carb or near 0 carb carnivore diet. By doing this, you remove all margin for error and you set yourself up to have the best possible outcome. All right, so once you've adopted this low carb, 0 carb carnivore diet, you're going to want to do that at least 30 days before you start trying to kill this stuff off. And that's going to get you past the adaptation phase. Because for most people, it's going to take you at least 30 days to adapt and adjust to a carnivore diet. Over that 30-day period, you can expect to have things like diarrhea, loose and runny stools, keto flu, die off of bad bacteria in your gut, because some of that stuff is going to start to die off, and that's going to lead to detox symptoms and kind of unwanted side effects like brain fog and keto flu-like symptoms, general lethargy, weakness, possibly some mild headaches, nausea, things like that. Including electrolytes can be very beneficial here. Staying hydrated, getting plenty of sleep, and resting. All those things are going to help. So once you've gotten past that 30-day adaptation period, the next step is to evict these unwanted guests from your house. And here's exactly how you do that. All right, the number 1 most effective evictor and enforcer I have ever found for eradicating H. pylori from your gut is called mastic gum. All right, this is the one I bought right here. I got this on Amazon. It's got, I don't even know how to pronounce this. I just know it's mastic gum. It had high ratings on there. I bought it. It works extremely freaking well. And what this is, it is actually tree sap. This is what it looks like. It looks like little chunks of amber or little chunks of tree sap. And what you do with this is you take this, and it's called gum for a reason. You put it in your mouth and you chew it up. Now, it is very, very hard when it starts out, but when it heats up, it's going to turn into a gum-like substance. And what I would do with this is I would take a piece about this big, so a piece about the size of the tip of my pinky finger here, put it in my mouth and chew on that for about 2 hours. All right, now I noticed that when I had heartburn, when I did that, I would have immediate relief. Within 5, 10 to 15 minutes, my heartburn would subside. Bam, just like that. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the H. pylori is actually getting killed off almost immediately, and it's lowering that bacterial load in there, and that allows your stomach acid to kind of boost naturally, because these things aren't in there cranking down your thermostat. You're actually able to kind of override that, and your stomach acid starts to come up, and that's what I experienced. Now, I would recommend only chewing on that for 2 hours, and then taking a break for a few hours and then doing it again, and you can repeat that process throughout the day. But what I would always do is I would chew on it first thing in the morning when I got up, and then I would chew on it about 2 or 3 hours before lunch, give myself at least an hour before eating, and then I would chew on it again in the evening. And after just a couple weeks of doing that, I saw dramatic improvements in the H. pylori symptoms I was dealing with. And another good thing about mastic gum is I never experienced any kind of unwanted side effects from that. The only thing I would say that you might experience if you chew on it for too long is that your taste buds can kind of get desensitized. All right, the second most effective natural remedy I found for killing H. pylori and getting these things out of your gut is broccoli sprouts. All right, this is a huge bag of broccoli seeds, sprouting seeds. I got these on Amazon as well. I'm going to put links in the description to all this stuff. But this is 2.5 pounds of broccoli seeds. All right, and there's instructions on the back. It tells you exactly how to sprout these things. What you want to do with these is you want to get little sprouters and you want to actually sprout these seeds and grow them into sprouts, like the sprouts they sell in grocery stores. And you can get these pre-sprouted from places like Whole Foods. Sprouts may have them. I'm not sure. I've never shopped at one of those, but that's another place you could look. And you might be able to order broccoli sprouts online, but broccoli sprouts is the end state that you want to end up with when you're using broccoli seeds. All right, so the good thing about broccoli sprouts, and the reason this works, is because it has sulforaphane in there, which is a plant toxin. It's a phytochemical. So in the carnivore community, I'm sure you're familiar with phytochemicals and phytotoxins. People talk about plant toxins and plants not wanting to be eaten all the time in the carnivore space. This is a very, very true thing because they can have unwanted side effects in your body. But the good thing about plant toxins is they're not only somewhat harmful to us, they're also very harmful to other living organisms, such as the unwanted guests in your gut. And that's exactly what sulforaphane does. It goes in there just like the mastic gum, and it is very effective and very efficient at eradicating H. pylori. Now, if you're dead set against consuming any kind of plant product, you can get sulforaphane supplements on Amazon. All right, and I'll put links in the description below for that too. I would just go to Whole Foods and I bought the broccoli sprouts and I would blend those up in my Ninja and drink them down. And I will say that sulforaphane, when combined with mastic gum, is probably going to be the most effective natural remedy for H. pylori. Now, the third most effective, and something else I also included but did not find as effective as mastic gum and sulforaphane, is berberine. And you can get berberine from things like golden seal, which is this right here. This is golden seal tea. So golden seal has berberine in it. Any herb or leaf or plant that you can find that has berberine in there is going to be very, very effective at killing H. pylori. I consume all this stuff away from the actual food I consume for nutrition because some of these plant compounds can 100% interfere with the absorption of certain vitamins and minerals. Now, here's another option for the golden seal. This is just a small pack of golden seal powder. I got this on Amazon as well, and you can mix this right in your water and then drink it down that way. And this is going to be very effective at killing H. pylori. So those are my top three. If I was to get H. pylori again, those are the three natural remedies I would use to eradicate it. Now, with that said, there are a few other natural products you can use. One being garlic. So raw garlic, which you can get at the grocery store. I would go with organic if you're going to buy this. You basically put this in your mouth, chew it up. It burns like crazy. Swallow that down. And that is going to also kill off H. pylori. The probiotic Lactobacillus gasseri is another great option. The big difference in that is that you're not really killing off the H. pylori. You're just replacing it with another type of bacteria. So one thing that I found personally is that when you have an overgrowth of bad bacteria in your gut, specifically candida and things like that, introducing more bacteria, even if it's good, can sometimes not be a very good idea. So if that's you and you have other forms of gut dysbiosis going on, that may be something you want to avoid. So essentially, you can think of Lactobacillus gasseri as another tenant that's coming in and forcing the bad tenant out. And the last natural remedy, and this one actually does work somewhat decent, this is something I also tried, is celery juice. Now, juicing celery was a really big trend back when I was trying to heal. So I got wrapped up in that and I started juicing celery, and I would go buy an entire clump of that stuff and I would shove it in my Ninja and I would juice it and I would drink that down. And I would do that first thing in the morning, every single morning. And I did that for probably at least a month. And I will say that there can be some benefits to doing that. And specifically, I would say that I did see some benefits in H. pylori when I was doing that. Now, the one thing I will say is that if you do that first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, or if you're not used to doing that, it can lead to loose and runny stools or a very urgent need to go to the bathroom. All right, so that's something to keep in mind. Now, for me, back when I was trying to heal, that was actually a beneficial thing because I had very bad constipation at that point in my life. So by taking the celery juice, it cleared me out pretty much every morning. And along with that stuff that was coming out of my body was also all the bad bacteria that was being flushed out. So it can be a very good way to cleanse. And the additional benefit to that is that it can also help reduce the population of those bad things that are living inside your gut. All right, so as far as timeline, how long should you do this? What I did is I did 2-week intervals. So I'd do 2 weeks on, mastic gum, sulforaphane, golden seal, and then I would do a week off to kind of assess my situation to see if the bad bacteria is still in there, see if I still had the symptoms. If I did, I'd repeat that process. Now, since you're doing carnivore for 90 days and you're essentially killing H. pylori for the last 60 days of that, I would follow that protocol. I would do 2 weeks on, test your symptoms for a week, and then 2 weeks on, test your symptoms for a week, repeat that process for as long as necessary. The good thing I found about these natural remedies is that I didn't really experience any unwanted side effects from doing this protocol. So that takes us to step 3. And step 3 is all about undoing the damage that these unwanted guests have done. So turning the thermostat back up, patching the drywall, cleaning their mess up, and for any stragglers that might be lingering behind, we want to kick them to the curb. So to turn the thermostat back up, we want to boost our stomach acid. We want to lower our pH. And there's a couple ways you can do that. So the first way, and this is a very, very natural way, is to use apple cider vinegar with Mother. All right, this is White House brand. This is the kind I use all the time. I do not use Bragg's because Bill Gates has his hand in that now. I don't trust anything that man has his hands on. So White House brand apple cider vinegar. Take 1 tablespoon of this 30 minutes prior to a meal. That is going to naturally boost your stomach acid and is also going to help kick any remaining stragglers to the curb. Because as I mentioned before, these unwanted guests do not like acidic environments, even though they live in your stomach, which does not make sense. Another very natural and safe way, and probably my favorite way to boost stomach acid, is to include more real salt in your diet. All right, this is a 10 pound container of Redmond real salt. You don't need this much. I had this for a specific purpose, but Redmond real salt is a great option. You can use Celtic salt, sea salt, any kind of real salt from the earth that is not table salt, that is not infused with iodine or flow agents or anything like that. Pink Himalayan salt is another great option and is also one of my personal favorites. So find yourself a good real salt, salt your food to taste, and that will also help to naturally boost your stomach acid. And last but not least, you can also use hydrochloric acid. All right, this is a HCl supplement. This has HCl and pepsin enzyme. So this is also a very effective way to boost your stomach acid, and it's probably going to be more effective than the salt and the apple cider vinegar, but is also probably going to be a little more expensive also. And just like apple cider vinegar, HCl is going to help to kick out any remaining unwanted squatters that might still be living in your house. Now, to patch the holes in the drywall, we want to seal that gut up. And we're going to do that by consuming ample amounts of collagen and bone broth. Those are the 2 most important things that you can include in your diet to heal your gut. I am a huge proponent of bone broth. I consume it at least once a day, every single day, and I have for years now. And if you don't make your own bone broth or you don't have access to it, buying a collagen supplement is also a great option. Now, one other very effective tool is L-glutamine. All right, this is Mutant brand. I used to take this all the time when I was powerlifting and stuff, but once I started healing, I started taking this to heal my gut. This is another very, very effective tool at healing the gut. And when you combine this with your bone broth, with your collagen, and you can actually mix this right in there and drink it down, it is an absolute powerhouse for healing the gut. There is nothing better. All right, so you've kicked out all the squatters, you fixed the damage, you renovated. Now the last and most important thing is to adhere to a diet that will not feed this bad stuff in the future. All right, so since you've already been doing carnivore for 90 days at this point, or you've been doing a very low carb or zero carb diet, my recommendation would be that if you want to eat other foods, you reintroduce them one at a time and test them on yourself to see how you respond. And what that's going to do is that's going to build a diet for you that you can adhere to from here out, because the last thing you want to do is go back to eating sugars, hyperprocessed foods, refined grains, carbohydrates, all these bad things that are going to feed that bad bacteria in your gut and cause it to reestablish itself and lead to you repeating this cycle. We want to keep your house in good repair. We want it to last at least 100 years, and we're not going to do that by letting these unwanted guests back in. All right, so let this low carb, zero carb diet be an elimination diet for you. And then after the 90 days, after this stuff is eradicated from your gut, reintroduce foods one at a time, test them on yourself. Anything that gives you a negative or unwanted side effect, put that in the pile of foods that are not optimal for you. Anything that makes you feel fantastic, put those in the pile of foods that are optimal for you. The only rule here is that you don't include hyperprocessed foods. You should be focusing on real whole foods only. And by simply doing that, you're going to drastically reduce your chances of letting these bad guys back in. So if you found this video useful and you got some value out of this, comment the word squatters below and let me know what your experience with H. pylori has been. I hope you have not dealt with this, but if you have, let me know what it's been like. And if you try this protocol, definitely keep me updated on how this goes for you. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm always more than happy to answer any questions any of you have. To see my step-by-step protocol on exactly how I patched my drywall and healed my very destroyed gut, click on this video right here. And P.S. if the video is not there yet, it's not done yet. But keep your eyes peeled because it's coming soon. Be sure to drop a like below for the YouTube algo, subscribe, join the Apex tribe, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace out.